Welcome to session number 16, Customer Service. You know, when I was preparing this series for you guys and gals to watch, my staff and I had a great debate as to whether this particular topic should be one of the topics in a quote and unquote sales training program, in a program designed to help a person achieve high volume. And we actually debated it for a while, and of course I was saying to myself and to my staff, customer service is a critical part of what we do as good professional real estate people. And it was interesting because it's not that my staff thought that customer service wasn't important, because we all know that is important. But I think the question kept coming up was, how does it relate to a person selling a lot of homes? And of course, it's a challenge trying to relate that to that. But I guess what it comes down to is, if you and I do a great job for the prospect and the client, and they remain with us as a customer for life, which is the goal that every salesperson has with every client, to have them as a customer for life, then you can see why this topic had to be included. One of the questions that came up in our conversation was, well, Mike, okay, a real estate person, now remember, my staff internally are not real estate salespeople, so they're not going to know some of the answers to questions that are obvious to you and I. They said, how many times will a real estate agent sell the same person a house over the course of their career? I said, well, if they're like most agents, they'll sell a person once and never see him again, no matter how long the agent's career lasts. If they're a good agent, they might have a chance to deal with that person a second time during their career. And if they're a great agent, a high producer, they'll handle that person's transactions over the course of a 10 or 15 or 20-year span. They'll handle possibly the rest of their family's transactions. In some cases, they'll handle their children's transactions as they grow up. And in all cases, they handle tremendous numbers of referrals from their centers of influence of that client. Because remember, every client also has a center of influence, so therefore the amount of transactions multiplies as you do your job right. So the truth is, customer service is the basis for making that business grow, doing multiple transactions from the same person over a long period of time. I mentioned that I was in a mastermind group with some great speakers at one point, and part of the debate was, how often do you want to see the same client? And see, my business philosophy since I started was always the same. I'd rather talk to you individually and or that group that you belong to once or twice a year for the next 10 years to try to get the message across to you so you could absorb, acknowledge, use, and grow with the message, than always try to find a new you. The rest of the speakers I was dealing with said to me the following: you know, Mike, it's much easier to find a new audience than it is to find a new message to take to the audience. Well, I don't believe that I have to find new messages to bring to you. I believe what I have to do is keep reinforcing the message that I have for you and keep making sure that message applies to you and present it in a way that you can use it. At the same time, I want to keep bringing new messages to keep you growing. So I would rather talk to you time and time again than to keep trying to find a new you. Now, your job is the same. You're better off talking to your past clients, centers of influence, time and time again, deriving business from them over a long period of time, than always trying to find new business. I've told many agents that if you take the system that we teach and you apply it for 5 to 7 years, good 50% of your total business in 5 to 7 years will come from past client centers of influence if the customer service that you offer is good. Then the amount of prospecting or lead generation or business generation is going to shrink as your career is enhanced, unless you're trying to make huge jumps in production long term. So let's take a look at customer service. I've written down a bunch of thoughts, some of which you're going to say, wow, that makes sense. Some you're going to question, and some you'll reject. That's okay. First thing I wrote down is that good customer service begins with good scripts, following the scripts, answering any questions and concerns they have, and telling them the truth. Here we go again, back to scripts all the time, following the scripts. Why don't you let go of that, Mike, and teach us something new? Because, see, the foundation of a great salesperson would be what they say to a client. And if you have a good script that is rock solid, that helps them understand the process, helps them to make a decision, and leads them to where they want to go, then that script becomes a critical part of the customer service you offer. See, how can you say you have good customer service if you don't know what you're talking about? See, it's impossible. See, okay, watch. Good customer service, I know what I'm talking about. Lousy customer service, I have no clue what I'm saying half the time. So therefore, a good script, following the script, answering any questions they have, taking care of the concerns they have, and telling them the truth become a vital part of the whole service prospect or process that you have to follow. Second thing I wrote down is good customer service requires continuous and regular communication. Whether it's the listing in process, a sale in process, calling them every 10 days should be a minimum what you do in talking to your prospects. Let's go back to scheduling. You set aside 20, 30, 40 minutes once a week, and you call each listing you have to update them. You set aside 20, 30 minutes, you call each pending that you have and update them. Good communication. I did a survey 6 years ago. We spent about $75,000. I had this great idea that we should do a survey and find out what the public thinks about real estate people at that particular point in our career. And we had about 60 questions we devised. We had a professional survey company do the survey. And one of the first questions that we asked was this question: what do you feel is the biggest problem between you and a local realtor? I think it was 65% said poor communication. See, what happens is we go out and we find a prospect. We do our lead follow-up. We do the pre-qualifying, make the listing presentation, get a contract signed. We get so excited that we never talk to them again until there's an offer on the property. Or we take a buyer out, we find them a home, we write a contract, we go into escrow, under contract with them, we're in our pending period, we don't talk to them again because we're so excited. Well, guess what, guys and gals? That is not only not good service, that is poor service. Third thing I wrote down is that we need to make sure that whatever service providers that we work with, okay, you might have a mortgage company you work with, a title company, home inspection company, etc., you need to make sure that the service they're offering is the same level and quality as the service that you're offering. So therefore, regular communication with your service providers becomes as critical as anything, because they have to back up, support, and make sure that what you're offering is being delivered by them. Because a major portion of the service in a transaction does come from the service providers, okay? So the better you communicate with them, and the better you define the service you want to offer with them, and the more service you offer them and your client, the better communication you'll have in that triangle. Now, one of the things that I've discovered, in fact, my great friend Floyd Wickman, who most of you know, one of the great speakers on the real estate circuit, he and I have talked about this 100 times over the years, is that one of the challenges that so many agents are involved in customer service is that they go on a listing, or they're going to negotiate a contract, or go to present an offer with a buyer or represent a buyer and showing property, is they have a tendency to overpromise what they're going to do, and then they underdeliver. See, our belief, I know Floyd and I have talked about this, is to underpromise and overdeliver whatever service you have to offer. See, if you walk in on a listing and you say, all right, I'm going to do these 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 things to get your home sold. And boy, they go, wow, and they sign a contract. And then you do 3 of them. And because you had so many things that you promised, it's very recognizable that you're never going to deliver on those things. Guess what happens? Okay? They can see that they can't give you anything else in terms of goods and good referrals and other good clients because of the service they received. See, I would rather walk in and say, I have one job: to put a price on your home to cause it to sell, and then to get you to where you want to go. And that's my job. And let me go about doing it, sign the contract, and let's say they do. Then throughout the course of that listing process, you show them all the great things you're doing, so when they refer to their friends, they say, wow, Martha and Bob, this guy, he did so many things to get our home sold. He was so good in communication. You got to use him too. So the real catch is to under-promise and over-deliver. Okay? Not to over-promise and under-deliver in terms of customer service. Now, at the same time, the advantage of the communication, whether it be the communication during the presentation or the communication that follows, the advantage of the constant communication is that it draws out, brings to the surface problems that they are witnessing, feeling, experiencing, and having. I don't think there's a real estate transaction today that is done smoothly and easily. Every transaction has its own difficulties, whether it be difficulty in communication between listing agent, selling agent, buyer, and seller, mortgage company, title company, and all the rest of the providers, or simply, a problem because somebody didn't do something and something wasn't signed and a paper wasn't properly registered, and or somebody simply forgot, or somebody didn't call somebody back. But I think you can see as I start this example, there are so many problems that take place in a transaction. Now think about customer service. You might have 7 listings and you might have 5 pendings, but the seller on the listing you have, in their mind, it's the only listing you have and the only one that's of importance. So therefore, if you're not mindful of anything they're experiencing, if you're not mindful of the fact that they have concerns, if you're not mindful of the fact that there are problems they're dealing with in trying to get their home sold, you're making a mistake in customer service. So therefore, the more communication you have, the more you bring the problems in communication to the surface, they can say to you, do you know there were 2 agents here last week and they were very rude to me and they didn't show the house right. I'm really sorry that happened. I'll be sure to talk to them. I'll make sure that doesn't happen again. I'll do the best I can to avoid that situation. But see, if you don't talk to them, you can't deal with the problems, okay? Now, if you think about customer service from this standpoint, what they're looking for is reliability. And they're looking for dependability. Can they depend on you to do the things that you said you were going to do? Can they rely on you doing them in the timely manner that you stated? See, I'm always leery when I hear a salesman say, all right, it's Tuesday, I'll call you by Wednesday at 5. I say, well, now, can you do that? Oh, yeah, no problem, I can call you by Wednesday at 5. And then Thursday at 5, I call them and they go, who's this? I mean, not only did they not follow up, they forgot who they were talking to. See, you have to become very reliable to cause them to want to deal with you on a regular basis. You have to be considered to be very dependable. I mean, if you said you're going to do something by Tuesday at 5, let's have it done by Tuesday at 3. See, dependability is a critical thought. Watch what I wrote down here. Let me read this to you. Remembers that the qualities of reliability, dependability are what they're looking for. Practice these 2 qualities all the time. If you don't practice these 2 qualities, you're going to end up with a lot of clients that unfortunately aren't going to like you a lot during the transaction because of all the emotions, and they're going to like you less when it doesn't happen the way it's supposed to. And then when it finally closes, that dislike will keep you from getting referrals, which means that any and all customer service that you were thinking about using is gone. So customer service then becomes critical in terms of having them like you enough to give you business sometime in the future. Now, I wrote down a point here. I want to read it to you if I may. Treat every person as you would like to be treated to enhance your customer service. Now watch, how many times have you heard that in your life? Okay? Treat every person as you would like to be treated if you want to enhance your customer service. Do you like people to call you back when they said they're going to? Do you like them to do what they say they're going to do? Do you like them to deliver the stuff they said they're going to deliver on a timely manner? I had an experience recently where we ordered a couch for our home, and that they said it would take 8 weeks. Well, 16 weeks into it, I'm calling to find out what's happening, and they're acting like I don't even exist, and you're talking about spending $18,000 for a couch. Well, watch. Is that how you want to be treated? The answer is no. Well, then is that how they want to be treated? The answer is no. So my belief is this. If you're not interested in having yourself being treated in a respected way, in a professional manner, if that isn't of interest to you, then it's going to be hard for you to adopt the philosophy that the client is always right, is always right, is always right, is always right, and is always right. Because the number one philosophy in customer service is the client is always right. Well, but Mike, you have to understand something. You know, there's times when they're dead wrong. I mean, they're just wrong. So how can you say that they're right? Well, my attitude is even when they're wrong, if you prove them wrong, guess what? You've lost the client. So there's always that fine line between telling them they're wrong and convincing them what has to be done to continue. Watch. They're dead wrong, and you know it. And it's absolute fact they're dead wrong in their opinion about this transaction. You know, Mrs. Smith, I really appreciate your opinion and your concern. And I want to look at that very carefully as I solve this problem. And I've made some decisions what I can do to solve the problem. I think you're going to like the result. Fair enough? Well, as long as this thing is solved, no problem. Let me solve the problem. And then you go about it. Instead of saying, wait a minute, don't you understand you're wrong? I'm the real estate person. I'm the one that's right here. See, that's not going to win you any friends and influence people, as Dale Carnegie said, in every situation. So therefore, we have to understand that it's critical, okay, to always make sure that you treat them in the way you want to be retreated. Now, remember also that customer service basically is a prospecting system. Now, when I say that, I have to mention the word prospecting, which we all hate to hear. Customer service is a way of enhancing your business. Customer service is a way of attracting new business to you. Customer service is a business-getting tool. Customer service is a way to build your business because, see, by good customer service, people want to give you something. And what they're going to give you is referrals on a regular basis. So my belief is this, that your customer service then becomes one of the strongest things that you do in your business. If your customers are your biggest asset, which I think you would agree they are. See, if you're going to sell your little real estate practice at some point, what are you selling? You're selling your past client list, you're selling, obviously, your center of influence list, and you're selling the goodwill that you've created among those parties. So therefore, that relationship you have is the asset that you have. If you're abusing the relationship, then you're abusing the asset. So therefore, since your customers are your biggest asset, the service I extend becomes a critical part of enhancing the asset. You can't give people too much good service. You know, I grew up in a Catholic school system, and the nuns used to always say, you always have to say, thank you, ma'am, and thank you, sir. You never go in any conversation without saying thank you. And then, of course, I worked at Disneyland when I was 17, 18, 19 years old, and we had to call everybody Mr. or Mrs. or Miss, and we had to say thank you, ma'am, thank you, sir. And if we didn't, I mean, you could get terminated from the company because they didn't think you were being respectful. Well, I want to create a stronger asset. Think about it. The words you use, the actions you take, okay, the look on your face. They say something you don't like and you go, oh. Well, that's not going to bring you a lot of good customers for life that way. They say something you don't like, you not say, I understand how you feel. And I really want to thank you for bringing that up. It gives me something to think about. So, you know, common courtesy, okay, is really a critical part of customer service. Probably the last area that we need to look at in customer service is really the part that I've mentioned probably 2 or 3 times during this series. And that is, if you want to have good customer service, you gotta remove the drama that people want to place in every real estate transaction. Drama is an emotion. People are emotional. Some people are more emotional than others. And if you take the emotion of a $3 or $4 or $5 or $8 or $10,000 check, and the fact that you may not have had one for a while, so there's a little bit of a draw to you towards that check, and there's an obvious need to get it, and there's a little bit of pressure to have it, and a little bit of stress involved, and all of a sudden you start thinking, I better get that check, and therefore you better be careful, don't do this, and you got to do that, you can't have this happen, and all sorts of drama comes about, and pretty soon there's more drama than there is common sense in the transaction. They're not going to come back to you time and time again if you're creating drama in your transactions. So watch this thought, because I was asked this question, okay? Somebody said to me, Mike, give me the highest level definition of great customer service in real estate. What is the highest level of service we could offer? I was asked this question in Bakersfield, California. I'm going to guesstimate it was probably 20 years ago. It was a small group for Century 21 that I was speaking to, maybe 50 people. And I said the following: the highest level of service that you can give a seller is to get the property sold, and the highest level of service on a transaction in process is to close that transaction as smoothly as possible. Watch. The highest level of service I can offer a seller, get the property sold. The highest level of service once it's sold is to get it closed. I am not exaggerating. A lady in the audience stood up and started arguing with me about this in front of the whole room. And I mean, she was livid. She wrote letters to the local real estate board. She wrote letters to the California Association of Realtors. She wrote letters to the National Association of Realtors. She wrote letters to the guy that ran the region. She wrote letters to the management of the region. She wrote letters, to my company and to me that this was insane, it was awful, and I don't understand, and how can they let me speak like this? I'm going, hey, what do they hire you for when they list the property? To get it sold. And once it's sold, what are you being paid for to get it closed? So therefore, the highest level service you can offer is to do those things in a respectable, professional manner, period. So think about what your real job is. Find a prospect, get them qualified, make the presentation, get it listed or sold, get it closed, and then continue in good conversation with them forever to keep them as customers for life. Here's your challenge on this particular session. Of all the clients you've had so far, how many are customers for life? Of all the ones you're going to attract because of what you're learning, how many will you keep as customers for life? The goal is to keep them all. Let's get at it starting today.